Did I lose you? Dan, hello? I think I lost you.
You
There you
know?
are. Yeah.
That was weird.
Yeah. Woo. Ooh. Third degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. The Third Degree Net Podcast. The Third Degree Net Podcast. The Third Degree Net Podcast.
Soccer 90 is your source for all FC Dallas, US national team and international club gear. This Black Friday, save with deals of up to 50% off everything. Offer good in store and online. On Cyber Monday, 40% off everything all day. Offer online only at soccer90.com, so you don't even need your third degree promo code.
That's a pretty good deal.
That's an absolutely excellent deal. Well, hey Buzz, I guess we're without the birthday boy today.
Oh, is that what it is? Oh, it is his birthday, isn't it? I thought he was just gone for Thanksgiving.
Oh, maybe he is. Maybe he's just thankful for his birthday.
Yeah. Thankful to be old. Yeah.
Well, obviously, we're missing Peter's professional tones today, so we'll just kind of muddle through a nice Q&A from our Patreon subscribers and really people on social media platforms. How does that sound?
Well, since that's what we have prepared, that sounds awesome.
Oh, good, because I hadn't prepared anything else. I just rely on you to give us a run sheet. I mean, that crayon list is just perfect.
Yeah, there's no crayon involved in any of these lists.
So, yeah, I guess let's get down to it. Going with our wonderful Patreon subscribers first. Thank you so much for keeping the lights on at Third Degree HQ, aka Buzz's Porch. We'll start with Chris Wells. Chris wants to talk about the TV deal. When does enough revenue come in to maybe keep better talents or bring in some from other leagues? And he mentions not quite competing with the big five leagues, but I think as you mentioned in a burn, kind of going up from the AA level to the AAA.
Yeah, the answer is that this is going to be an incremental process. The first big jump that everyone is expecting is the next TV deal, which will kick in for 2023. This is the one that MLS has sort of been counting on. It's the one that will theoretically lead them into the World Cup, and they're going to want like a big partner sort of build up, and they're expecting to get a huge bump out of this deal. It's going to probably include some bundling of local deals and national deals, probably under one or two umbrellas. So it may change the way local TV deals work. You may not get teams doing their own TV deals from there on. It'll just be kind of the way, non-specifically kind of the way USL works, where all the deals are on one platform, like in that case, ESPN Plus. I'm not saying it's going to be ESPN Plus. I'm just saying that that's the way things are going these days, because the more you can bring to the table, the more you can monetize, the better off you can be, and you can do a lot of things more cohesively that way and help out some teams like Dallas, which don't have great TV deals. So the next one is going to be, they think, a big jump, but then it'll just continue to incrementally happen as they go forward. As this league continues to grow, it'll be more and more substantial. And they already have attendances that are equal to some of the biggest leagues in the world. So you just have to translate some of those things into television and other activities, which is why some people around the world are so hopeful, and why FIFA gave the World Cup to the United States in the first place. There's so many people here that they think it can be a humongous cash cow, particularly if the things with Mexico, Liga MX sort of mergers or things happen, then you'll really see that'll be the deal, the TV deal that can push both of those leagues into the stratosphere of clubs around the world. Would be a combined Liga MX MLS property of some kind, a true combined league. That'll be the massive build jump.
Yeah, I think there's a big caveat in it, in that in some ways it's not always about the revenue on getting those players, retaining other players, and kind of matching the larger leagues. And I'm going to take your Newcastle United as an example. So Newcastle got $204 million in revenue in 2020, $160 million of that from TV rights. They also posted an $120 million loss. And obviously fans were, not exactly happy with the lack of transfer activity. It's not always about how much is coming in as much as it is what you do with it, and are you willing to invest it in those ways? If you give it to LAFC, absolutely. If you give it to FC Dallas, well, maybe not. I mean, to a small degree, we know the Hunts like to operate in a little safety zone, and maybe that'll just make them a tiny bit more adventurous within that, knowing that they're not going to bankrupt the club. But, increments on the league scale are going to be so much smaller on the club scale, just with the way they operate. I mean, we're remarking over the first time they've gone over $1 million on a player they haven't then immediately sold, and that's only $3 million, which on the grand scheme of which on the grand scheme of the league isn't, and then especially compared to some of the bigger leagues, is a drop in the ocean.
Yeah.
Well, I guess let's go to the next question, which comes from El Jefe, the legendary Dustin Chrisman. And I'm really interested to get your take on this. Which player move do you think is going to happen that no one is expecting? So no Pepi, no Jesus, none of the ones that everyone's guessing anyway.
Yeah, what I'm now expecting to have happen, and I have zero evidence for this. This is 100% just off the cuff. Instead of announcing that they did not retain and pick up the options for Brian Acosta and Bresson, they're going to instead announce 2 new 3-year contracts for those 2 players.
Well, that's terrible.
I didn't say you were going to like it. I said that's what I think is going to happen. I don't have a lot of confidence in the current scouting setup that FC Dallas is employing, and Dan Hunt and other people keep talking about how 2 of their DP slots are filled. Well, to me, that means that you think both Franco Jara and Brian Acosta are going to be here next year. So, I don't think that that'll include, Acosta is theoretically in the prime of his career, right? So, and Bresson is Zanata's buddy from Gremio. So I just have, you call it a fear if you want, call it a premonition, those are 2 things that I think no one would expect to have happen, that I think have a much better than 0, maybe even better than 50% chance, even higher chance of happening, as much as I would hate it.
Well, this has been episode 138, Third Degree the Podcast. Thanks for tuning in.
Sorry, Dan.
Wow.
Okay,
let's
who's on your list?
You know what? I was trying to sort of rattle my brain, and I couldn't really think of anything. The only one I kind of figured, and it's not one that nobody is speculated, is Thomas Roberts finally gets free.
Yeah,
but,
surely could happen. Yeah.
Let's go on to El Jefe's other question. Maybe that'll get a little bit of a better answer. So, Nashville beat Orlando out of the playoffs. What are the odds that FC Dallas could money whip Orlando City to get Pepi back?
I'm going to say pretty low. They have some new owners there in Orlando, and my completely uneducated take will be that they'll look at the fact that he's got them in the playoffs every year after they'd never been in the playoffs before he got there. And they'll look at the rapid turnover they had in coaches before he got there compared to when he's been there now. And that the new owners are going to say, no, you're my guy for now. And we'll have zero interest in letting him out of his contract or firing him or anything. In fact, they will probably insist that he stay because of the success he's had for that club relative to other people. Now, in the long run, will they keep him? I don't know. But I think right now, basically they'll say no chance in hell that they'll let Oscar out of his Orlando deal. If they would, I think the Hunts probably would be very interested in that. The part that I think you have no clue is whether Oscar would be interested in that. I don't think he would want to come back yet. That's my guess.
Yeah, I don't see the money whipping part. With the Wolves, buying majority stake from Flavio da Silva, I kind of see one of 2 things. Them being ultra consistent, wanting to keep Pepi going forward, or saying, okay, here's a chance. Let's take the Orlando City that's not been amazing and turn it into the Orlando City that was promised in 2014. Luis Mizzi is kind of that last hangover from Da Silva with their Brazilian connection, and Oscar's his guy. If they wanted to clear house, maybe that does create an opportunity for FC Dallas to say, hey, please come back. Whether he then would or not, who knows? But I would definitely lean to the consistency side of things, like you were saying.
Yeah, if they were in last place, it'd be different. But I 100% think that they won't. Now, if they were to let Oscar go, I'm sure the Hunts would call him. But I don't think I think there's a very, very limited chance that they would money whip him out of that situation. To answer the question specifically.
Absolutely. Here's the one I'm kind of dreading. From Phil Luchford, not Luchi Gonzalez. He kind of wanted to rate a couple of different areas of signings from FC Dallas. So talking about homegrowns, draft picks, domestic signings, international signings, and high-profile DPs. Well, we can forget about that last one. There hasn't been a high-profile DP in a long time. How would we rate those areas? For areas they're weak in, what are the opportunities where they could reasonably improve?
Okay, homegrown signings A, draft picks C, domestic signings incomplete because they don't do any. So, I mean, it could go 0, F, I don't know, whatever you want to call that. They don't do any. So that's a bad grade or an incomplete grade or whatever. International signings C, high profile DP signings. I'm just going to presume that all DP signings are high profile. That used to be a B, but lately it's a C. And maybe even a D or an F, depending on how tightly you want to consider lately. The things that could they reasonably improve? Well, improving your DP signings is going to be difficult because the Hunts don't want to spend enough money to get super high return kind of signings. When they were at their best, FC Dallas, and you can combine domestic and signings and international signings and DP signings. You can combine all these under one umbrella. When they're at their very best at this, it's when they go for young, emerging talents that somebody with a good soccer mind has scouted, whether it's Oscar finding Fabian Castillo, whether it's whoever, Oscar or Cavillo signing Grezzo. You have to, if you're going to spend the money the Hunts are going to spend, you have to be able to get a much higher successful hit percentage. So the short answer to what could be by itself a multiple hour conversation is that you have to get better at scouting across the board on all these categories. In the last 2 or 3 years, basically since Zanata's come in and Lucci came in, it's hard to tell that they were good at those things. There's been some big misses the last 3 years in every category except homegrown signings. And even those last couple homegrown signings, I do wonder about.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you could take it back another year or so and say, really, ever since Chewy Rivera was brought in as the director of international scouting, because we just haven't seen enough from that. We've seen a couple of internationals that came in, more on the European side than anything. We know that Cobra was brought to FC Dallas' attention by MLS itself. We know Hristo Stoichkov was responsible for picking up the phone and calling Clavillo about Nedyalkov. We don't know too much about how they came to find the Sabot Shun. And then, we know FC Dallas does the coaches do their individual trips. There are obviously a few links in Colombia. So, how much is Chiri's role, or his original role, away from being an assistant coach, really contributed to the sort of the inlet of players, I guess.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see when he sort of changed roles a little bit, because the last couple of years I've known Chewy mostly as a guy who was responsible for development of homegrowns as they come into the first team, sort of a transition coach, if you will, to try and help those guys progress. And that's the part they've nailed the best. If you don't have a good scouting department and spend enough money in that department, then you're not going to do well. But if you go back to the end of the Pareja era, when they signed people like Ziegler and they signed people like Grezzo, there's an era in there where they were on point with all their signings. So they're capable of doing it. They just have to get back to whatever that was when they were hitting on those guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the only other thing I would say, maybe I'd probably say a B on the homegrown signings, just because there's been a couple of missed opportunities there. We're talking about Jonathan Gomez kind of going off and doing his thing, and then those sort of B-level players, which I know we're going to get into in just a minute, but we just saw Nico Ferreira make his first appearance on the bench in the German second division this weekend, and congratulations to Nico for that. But when we're talking about a fragile defense in need of a rebuild, suddenly players like that looks far more valuable.
Chris Richards too comes to mind. Well, that's a successful sign and sell more than it is a missed piece. Yeah, there's definitely been some missed pieces. They could get better across the board, but the homegrowns for the most part, if you can get 1 or 2 or 3 a year, that's stunningly remarkable success, and that's kind of where they are. So it's hard to argue with that too much.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty solid segue, because I think maybe that may link potentially into your answer. I could be totally wrong. To the next question, which comes from Arlo. What is the lowest hanging fruit that FC Dallas could take as the next step as an organization, or to take as the next step?
Yeah, if you want to talk bang for buck and like the easiest way to get better with like your best hit rate, and that's just to be patient. I know that sounds ridiculous, but their best success rate is young talent from the academy. And they're very, very close to having a staggeringly good midfield, all with homegrowns. And they have guys up front that are staggeringly good. Pepi, and if they keep Dante Seeley, and if they get... Schoon's not an academy player, but it's the same principle. This young project, under 22, whatever they call it, it's the same idea. And that's the best way to get your bang for the buck, is to find these young homegrowns and get them locked up long term at a cheaper rate than it would be for how good they're going to be, in the sense, if you bring in a 26 to 28-year-old DP level player, they're going to be crazy expensive compared to what it is if you can afford to wait for Jesus and Paxton and Pepi. And if you could have done it with Chris Richards, and if you could have done it with Brian Reynolds, that's your biggest bang for the buck and your biggest way for this organization to win, because they're so bad at scouting it, not by our opinion that we think it was a bad player, purely based on results. They're not getting it done scouting. So the easiest way to progress this club to be a competitive club is to wait for and keep players. Wait for Jesus and Paxton and Pepi. It won't be Pepi, but that's a good example. If you could keep Pepi till he's 25, oh Lord, man, wow, that's how you do it. That's the easiest way to do it, cheapest way to do it.
Yeah, definitely. And I was kind of scratching my head on that one, thinking you can do better on a domestic market, kind of pick up like how Dax McCarty seems to be the guy that every team picks up to go from being kind of crappy to a contender for something. But then you've got Brandon Savani, you've got Edwin Cerrillo. You're taking minutes away from them, so then you're waiting longer for them to progress. Likewise, if you went forward, look for someone to take one of the two positions that Jesus could play. It's it's not the answer that any FC Dallas fan's going to want after all these years, but it is really a patience thing, and maybe Dan Hunt's wildest dreams could come true, and those players could all blossom at once, push for something, and then get sold for millions.
Yeah, if you combine, in a way, scouting of domestic players, whether you sign them or drafting them. You can look at Hollingshead, Hedges, Nkosi, Maurer. You can get solid pieces that can, at times, compete for the best in the league. Hollingshead has been the best left back in the league at time. Hedges was a defender of the year. Maurer last year, you could argue, should have been keeper of the year. So these domestic players are capable of playing at that high level. So that's the second way you could improve your team, is to do a better job and deliver at a higher percentage through your draft picks and through your domestic signings. Honestly, Jimmy Maurer is probably the last domestic signing that's hit, and he wasn't even out of MLS. He was out of a lower league. So it can be done. It's going to take work and people, but it's still cheaper than hiring DPs. You can look at teams that are in the playoffs and making deep runs. Colorado, I think, has one DP or two, I think. Philly has one, I think. So you can perform without them if you do a good enough job in other ways. And those are two ways that you can. Those other two ways. They're cheaper than high-tier DPs.
So Trent Dismuke wanted to talk about something that costs as much as a DP, and that's North Texas SC. 3 years now. Has it been successful in progressing young players?
In two ways, yes, and in one way, a third way, no. The two ways it's been successful in progressing young players is the playing of academy players at that level. You can look at Jonathan Gomez, you can look at Kevin Mania, you can look at Damus, you can think of Arturo Arrigos. Those guys all progressed coming out of the academy into that team. Those are all good examples. Now, none of them yet have paid off for Dallas, but it is successful in what it does. The other way, the way that has actually helped the team, is the development of homegrowns that have been signed that need playing time. You remember at the very beginning, Paxton went down a little bit. Thomas Roberts went down a bunch. Brian Reynolds went down a bunch. The opportunity to get playing time for those 16, 17, 18-year-old kids is key. I mean, Colin Smith, who's a long-term development project, just spent a whole season down there. He's going to spend another whole season down there next year. So that part is working. The part that's not working is the player that maybe is not quite ready for a teenage homegrown, or is maybe just one tick off of a guy who's ready at 18. And that would be a guy like Nico Carrera, or a guy like Johan Gomez, or Jonathan Gomez, guys that you wanted to retain, there for a year or two and progress to the first team. That's not happened. The closest guy right now is Gibran Rayo, who's close to being that guy, but I don't know if he is. We'll see if he gets a real shot. He's the closest one to that, making that leap. And so far, that's not working. So it's half successful, maybe 2/3 successful, but not completely successful yet.
Yeah, I think I think certainly you look at Brian Reynolds, doesn't get that. He doesn't get the reps at right back. He doesn't get the progression to come in as soon as he did, and then that move to Italy. Likewise, Tanner Tessman. He was kind of on the radar as a homegrown, but his body of work with North Texas SC certainly pushed him a little bit further to the forefront. But yeah, I think your Nico Carreras, your Jogos, both of them, players like that. That's always going to be the kind of sour taste in the mouth that North Texas leads in its current guys. Moving to this MLS 2 deal, hopefully that LDL contract where they have that, you'd mentioned there's a progression of you have a couple of years as a lower division player, and then it's designed to move them on into like a homegrown capacity in MLS. That could be something that gets someone like, maybe not Jonathan Gomez, because both of the brothers, they knew Europe was the goal. They weren't signing. But, maybe that can be enough to appease like a Nico Carrera. Yeah,
that type of deal will function, will benefit the team in two ways. One is that you'll be able to effectively stash a homegrown, in the sense that, if I'm understanding the mechanics of it correctly, as to what they've communicated to youth players, is that there will be a connectivity that you can sign a one contract that'll have a certain number of years with North Texas and a certain number of years with MLS. So it's one deal and it's there. So effectively you can stash homegrowns that way. And the second is that even if you only get a North Texas component of it as an academy player, you can still feel confident that it's a singular organization in a lot of ways because your contract will be held by MLS, right? And there's now a direct connection, a direct corporate single entity rather than being a completely different league. So that second level will be enticing, I think, to guys that are right on the border, perhaps, with the idea that, hey, look, you're going to be working with us, the same contract. It's like it can carry over and that kind of talk. So, those contracts should change the way the thing works. So that'll be a fascinating process to see how that affects people's willingness to sign or not.
All right, so we've got the last one off of our Discord, folks. If you are a Patreon subscriber, the level that gets you to Discord is definitely worth it. It's a great 24/7 discussion on all things FC Dallas, MLS, USL, European soccer, everything else. Absolutely do it. It's a fun place to be. But Scott Humphrey asks, what can be done to bridge the soccer parent, fans, and supporters sections to create a great game day experience that doesn't alienate either group? Now, I know as somebody who's had a hand in supporters groups for years, what my opinion is, but I'm really interested to get your take as someone who, is kind of in the middle of that, sitting in a section away from both, really.
Yeah, I definitely want to hear what you have to say about it. But for me, from sitting further away, I think the biggest issue that you get in terms of those sections not enjoying each other is proximity. And that can be either, it's just on the other side of the stairs, or or even they'll sell you tickets in that section. So the number one thing that I think this club misses out on in terms of fan stuff is that I think that they should have a facilitating type relationship with supporters. They should go to the supporters and say, how can I help you? Rather than being a hindrance, which I think they currently are, because I have the feeling and the impression that they don't particularly like them very much. But, it's hard to say exactly why that is, other than the fact that they're often working against them. So for me, to bridge that gap actually requires a gap. And to me, that means having a separate section for the supporters that is a little bit away from normal people, having only supporters be able to get tickets in that section. Now, that doesn't mean that you sell through the groups necessarily, but it needs to mean when you're selling people tickets in that section, okay, you have to understand this is the supporter section. People are going to be standing. There's going to be confetti thrown. There's going to be language. It's not a kid-friendly zone. And that needs to be separated from sections that are kid-friendly zones, which is the bulk of the stadium. So if you have a little bit of a separation there, then you lose some of the things that people most complain about. When you can't hear as much of the stuff or see as much of the stuff going on, then I think that'll help that a little bit. And then outside of that, it's just honestly supporting the supporter sections, because they are the section that brings the most interest to a soccer game in terms of crowd building. So that's my short take on somebody who's not intimately involved with supporters. I think that's important things to do, though.
I think that's actually a great point, and the added separation wasn't really something I'd considered, but coming from Europe, everything's segregated. You have a supporters stand, you have an away stand, you have a family stand, and you have that kind of big general stand. FC Dallas, it's all, you've just kind of shoved your supporters into one corner. You've given overflow seating on the opposite side of the same part of the stadium, literally the furthest section away. And when you have away supporters, they're kind of spread out, so it's easier for them to kind of be seen a little bit. So definitely having that kind of that separation, which the beer garden was kind of nice because it created that.
Yeah.
When El Matador was on the south side, it kind of created that because you knew what to expect. I think one thing, and it's actually something Tanner Tessman had mentioned in Chum Chat when they were talking about it. And if you haven't heard that episode, definitely go and check that out. It was a great insight into the player's mind of stadiums and fans. But He'd mentioned, why doesn't the club do more to get everybody involved? Because you get this clash. You get supporters that are like, oh, well, they don't want to do anything. They don't want to cheer this team on. They don't care. And you also get people who sit in the other seats who are like, oh, they don't want us involved. They're just so elitist. Those supporters, screw them. Well, we get things like the Hoops clap. We get things like the basic FC Dallas chant, right? Everyone joins it in, whole stadium at times, as long as they're not playing like crap.
Yeah.
Now, the supporters groups have actually been asking for years, hey, let's get song lyrics out. Let's put them on the video ribbon boards. That's actually how Deep in the Heart of Texas started as like a stadium-wide thing before the game. Get it printed in those little match day magazines they used to give out, season ticket holder emails, something that can, a little handout that says, hey, if you want to know the songs, go to El Matador's website, DBG's website. Here's your, here are some resources.
Yeah, that gets back to the idea, of like, how can we help you? That would be a great idea. You have to listen to your supporters, your most hardcore supporters, and try, just like you do your season ticket holders that are paying your big money fancy tickets. You listen to them. What do you guys like? What kind of hot dogs should we get you? Do you like a different kind of beer? In your luxury suite, same thing with the supporters. They're some of your most important people. You're probably your most loyal people. What can we do to help you? What kind of things do you want? What should we do to make it a better experience for you? And instead, I think they look at that group as like a headache and just want to get rid of it. And I think that's a short-sighted look at the way soccer should be done.
Oh, absolutely. I think, your support and atmosphere is your biggest sales tool, your biggest marketing asset.
Yeah.
That's why it's on every MLS and FC Dallas advert. If you have those people in jerseys, that's a great advert for Adidas, for MTX, for Advocare, for, whoever you get on that, those walking advertising boards. The problem is FC Dallas has always either said no or just to peel the curtain back a little bit, have said, hey, we'll do this, but as long as you give us your member lists. That's a big no-no for supporters groups. So,
yeah.
For one, DBG does have a formal membership, so it does have a list. But there's also, people just by association who may buy a jersey or a scarf or something. El Matador does not have a membership formally. So there is no list to give. Now, you may say, okay, well, why not just hand it over? It's easy, right? Well, I don't want somebody giving away my personal details. I don't want my, now FC Dallas may have my address, my phone number, my email address. But that's because I consented to give it to them, not because somebody else did.
Yeah. This is why I get back to the idea of the club should say, okay, you're buying a ticket in the supporters section. You don't have to go through the supporters groups to buy them, but just make it very clear. This is what this section is. Just like you should have a family section at the other end of the stadium away from them. Don't like that. Okay, we have a section for family only where there's no cussing and there's no beer. And there's, you can see other ways to service fan groups. It's all part of fan service. You got to develop your audience.
I wouldn't buy a house near DFW and complain about the noise, right?
Right, exactly.
So, yeah, no, totally. I think that's absolutely something. And, it's definitely, something we can always expand on later down the line, speak to Stephen and Luis from the supporters groups and kind of, go into detail about the supporters groups. But, we've obviously got a lot of questions to get on.
Yeah. We don't have... Well, some of these topics we could spend literally hours on, but, we don't have that kind of time.
Fortunately, and, we are still in the Patreon questions. Patreon subscribers do get those third-degree burns, which, honestly, these topics are all basically burns. Like those sort of, 2 to 8 minute videos where you talk through great topics.
They could be, yeah. We're going to burn them all in one podcast. This is a terrible idea, Dan. Whose idea was this?
we've blown ourselves up for the season.
Yeah.
Well, let's get on with it anyway.
Yeah.
Joseph Inman asks, how likely is Jesus to leave? And how likely is Paxton to, quote-unquote, get better?
I don't think Jesus is likely to leave this winter. I definitely think that he's likely to leave at some point. If he had been in the national team a little more this year, I think he'd be more primed to go. I think, and this is actually something we'll talk about later. If it doesn't come up with another question, we have something we should talk about at the very end. But I think Jesus he does have some mercenary tendencies in him, I believe, but I don't think it's now. So I think it's 85% he's staying this winter. That's pretty strong, but I kind of feel that's the case. And how likely is Paxton to, quote, get better back to peak form? Well, 100% he will be better because just on the medical side alone, my understanding of the surgery and the injury he had, and I'm not a doctor, obviously, but I did read about it for 10 seconds. So I know that it's an injury that takes time. Like I know when you do an ACL, there's 1 year before you can start playing, but then it takes a whole nother year for your brain to really agree that you're back and for you to have full confidence. So we always talk about ACLs being 2 years, 1 year to get back and another year after that. I think this is like that when they talk about how, and Paxton even himself said this, that he would feel better in 2 years than he did at the time it happened. So 100% Paxton will continue to feel better. Now, getting back to peak form is an entirely different question, and I think it's dependent on him moving back inside. So if they move him back into the middle, I think that the chances are 70% that he'll be able to get back to peak form. That's where I have it, both of those questions.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't have a gauge on Jesus, but Paxton, I think we're going to look back on this season as just he got better, health-wise. You had a cam hip impingement. So you think of that ball and socket joint in your hip where, there's cartilage around between the ball and socket. Well, his ball wasn't exactly a ball. It was an NFL ball, and it was rubbing that away at that socket and that cartilage. Every time he's putting pressure on that leg, that's just pain. So he's had to learn to walk to a degree, to run at his normal gait, not kind of compensating for any of the pains that he was experiencing around his groin, around his hamstring, around the things that hip was affecting, and that kind of stops you focusing on your game. So yeah, year 2, I'm really excited to see what we get from him, especially if he is on the middle where he really should be. But yeah, I mean, better is definitely going to happen in one way or another.
Yeah, I said at the beginning of the season that if he got 15 starts, I'd consider it a success. He ended up with 18, which is too short of his best when he had 20 back in 2019. So the thing about Paxton is that he has never been, other than that, I mean, a 34-game season, he's never started more than 20. So that's what we have to hope for Paxton, is that this surgery and just in general, he figures out how to take care of himself better so that you can get a 30-game season out of him. Maybe you don't want 34, but you would like to see 30-ish in that neighborhood. And so that's the progression for him. And I think if he can play that many, it'll be because he is getting back to peak form and because they are relying on him. And I think that's what we would want to see next year, is that progression to that many starts.
Well, Gennaro Giasso actually mentions Paxton benefiting from the 5 sub rule. Is that here to stay in MLS?
Yeah, unfortunately it is. I hate this rule like I've hated nothing else before in the history of soccer. And I cannot stand that this is the case, but it's exactly like I said it was going to be, which is that once they did it, they were never going to go backwards. We're going to be stuck with 5 subs the rest of our lives, I'm afraid.
Yeah, my only bright glimmer of hope is the Football League went back to 3, and honestly, it's been great. There was a game where Luton were down, were getting absolutely destroyed. They were 1-0 down in the first 10 minutes, couldn't get the ball. Manager makes a double substitution, changes the formation, which is now risky with 1 sub left, but it just made the finish to the game so thrilling. I think the very next day it happened in MLS. I think Bob Bradley may have done it. Well, that's fine, but he had 3 subs if it failed.
Yeah.
Not so great. It's more of just kind of a get out of jail free. I really hope that with the Football League going back to 3, and I'm not sure if any other competitions are sticking at 3, but I really hope that kind of drags the global trend in some way.
Yeah, I think our only hope is that the IFB, which last time I checked has 4 votes from Great Britain, as opposed to the rest of the world gets 4 votes. Our only hope is that the stubborn, old school, conservative Brits, for lack of a better term, choose to lock that up and force with their 4 votes and force 3 subs to be the standard on the rest of the world. And it's weird that I'm not usually necessarily a super conservative person, but this rule drives me crazy, and I really am. That's my last hope, is that the IFB will block. They're the ones that approve rules, by the way, if everyone doesn't know that. FIFA doesn't approve rule changes. IFB does, which is a committee of 8 votes last time I looked. And FIFA, which FIFA has 4 votes, and then the home FAs, as they call them, have the other 4. Dan, correct me if I'm wrong on that. That's our hope for this rule not going through, is that the 4 home FAs will stop it in the mud and keep it from going. And basically it's the poor teams, because the rich teams want this. The rich teams want 5 subs because they have more depth on their bench and they have more talent on their bench that they can use to beat bad teams that don't. And they have guys that more deeper, longer rosters that they can rotate in, and the poor guys don't. So if you are a fan of a poor team, of which we clearly are, you want less subs, not more.
Absolutely, 100%, because nobody... I mean, indoor soccer's not massive for a pretty good reason, right?
Right.
Nobody wants to see rolling subs. Lindsay Horn has a couple of questions. We talked about Jesus. Let's talk about Ricardo Pepe. So is there anything keeping Ricardo Pepe from arranging a deal with a new team now so that he can at least go to train until the window opens?
The only thing that's stopping that from happening is FC Dallas and or whatever team he's talking to that may or may not have worked out a deal. If they had a deal in principle in place, then they could do that kind of thing. But as long as FC Dallas is not agreeing to anything, then Pepe can't do anything. Like right now, Pepe's training, and I only know this because I know somebody that saw him. He and Jesus and Edwin were training on their own up at Frisco at Pizza Hut, goodness, at Toyota Soccer Complex. So if he were out of contract, that would be different. Then he would have a lot more flexibility. But given that he's under contract, he's basically stuck. He can't do anything unless FC Dallas agrees, and they're not going to agree.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult. It comes into that tapping up territory. Also, he's going to be going overseas. There is a very fine line between what you can and can't do that's considered work, business or pleasure, and what requires a work permit. Obviously, someone's not going to sponsor a player for a work permit just to train. It's actually kind of one of those little loopholes that players on trials like to do. They pick out a soccer club that will apply for a work visa and an international transfer clearance because they know the bigger club they actually want won't do it.
Yeah.
Not that Pepe's going to do that. Lindsay had a second question. We talked about it. Paxton in the middle. What does he have to do to get there?
Well, Paxton, nothing, because it's not up to him. I mean, other than making it known to the club that he really wants to be in the middle, it's going to be down to a coach. Potentially with the idea that the owner or Zanata might say, hey, we really want to see Paxton in the middle, said coach. But otherwise, that's it, basically. So you have to, you can tell the coach, I want to be in the middle. You can, in training, when you get opportunities in the middle, you can outplay the other options. That's what you can do. But in the end, it's the coach's decision where you play. So unless your captain is going to screw over his coach, which has happened, there are cases in FC Dallas history where the team's supposed to play a 3-5-2 and they go out to the huddle 5 seconds for kickoff, and the captain says, screw that, we're playing a 4-4-2, and he gives all the players their positions. Because what can you do if you're the coach on the sideline at that time? Nothing. You can't control players on the field. But that's not likely, because that's when you've lost the locker room. So short answer is nothing Paxton can do about it. He's just going to have a coach that wants to play him in there.
Right, I'm going to request a burn on when that's actually happened in FC Dallas history, or Dallas burn history, because that sounds incredible.
I'll have to check with Andy Swift exactly when it was. I want to say it was Chad Deering that did it. I'll have to. I don't quote me on that until I check with Andy and see if I can compare notes.
Interesting.
Yeah, if I'll get the 100, it 100% for sure happened. I just have to see if I can figure out when it was.
Okay. Let's move on with Justin Bittner, and I'm really interested to hear your answer on this one. Based off your experiences at other soccer stadiums or sporting events in general, what is the one thing you would like to see FC Dallas incorporate into the game day experience?
Well, the things that I really liked at other stadiums are a couple of things that FC Dallas can't really do. And one of those was riding I don't know what they call it, the subway or the train or tram or whatever at Portland to their stadium, from downtown through downtown to their stadium, and then walking underneath the arches that's underneath their stadium. I happened to be going through that section when one of their fan bands was marching through there, and it was echoing and banging and riding on the tram with all the fans in their gear. That's all phenomenal, very urban sort of experience, and that's impossible for FC Dallas to do. They don't have those two things. The easy answer is shade. I'd love for there to be some shade at the Toyota Stadium fan experience. That'd be really nice. Again, that's super expensive, though, given the current circumstances. So honestly, I think it's what I got back to before. It's like I wish they would support the fan experience through supporting the supporters clubs, because think about that. Did you go to a game at Austin? I was sitting in the side section, not the end section, just the side section, and people all around me were singing the songs and doing the chants with the supporters because they knew them somehow. They'd been to enough games. I mean, not everybody, but they had seen the lyrics or had heard them enough, or whatever they had done in order to get the words to these people, and people all around me were singing and chanting. So that was really impressive, and I really think that's exciting if they can figure out how to do that.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the dream at Toyota Stadium. I think for me, I never really thought about I've obviously thought about the transport issue. I never thought about it as it pertains to the game day experience. The Portland thing sounds really cool. Red Bull Arena has something pretty similar. You get off the Harrison station or the Harrison stop on the PATH train from Manhattan. It's a 5-minute walk, and then there's this long drive where they have all like the Red Bull promotional crap and all that. Sorry, and that adds to kind of some of the showiness of it.
Yeah.
It reminded me of when you go to Wembley, you get off the train at one of the couple of stations around there, and Wembley Way is the big thing, right? This big ramp that goes up leads to the stadium. In the old stadium, the new stadium, it's the same thing, and it kind of encapsulates everything. Whether you've gone to a liquor store and had some, got some drinks to sort of drink around the streets, or you've gone to pubs or whatever, you walk up there, you walk past the Bobby Moore statue, there's the people selling scarves and flags, people singing in the streets, people, it's like the perfect preparation. You go to West Ham, you get off the tube at Upton Park Station, the old stadium, I haven't been to the new one. And it's like this 5-10 minute walk down the road to the station, to the stadium, and it's packed. It's just like it just builds up the atmosphere so much. And Frisco doesn't have that. It has a couple of tailgates that are really cool, but not a whole lot. It's not even that lively around the stadium. It's people kind of dodging traffic on the main street.
The other place that I've experienced that same kind of vibe is going to a Red Sox game when you're riding the T through Boston, going to a game. It can be similar. I do wonder if I don't take the DART, but I don't know if that train goes anywhere near Frisco. But like if they had a special FCD train that left, you could get like 100 supporters on it, that would get at least close to that kind of vibe. Maybe that's a reach, but
unfortunately, it's a massive reach just because the city of Frisco refused to participate in the DART. So it only goes as far as Plano, and that's the bus. The train doesn't even go up the tollway side.
Yeah, I just I guess that's the thing I think that you miss the most at FC Dallas is that sort of that general milling among fans kind of moment as you're approaching the game, whether it's, coming in through the gates or whether it's riding the trams or whatever. In Frisco, it's highway, parking lot, you're in a line with like 20 people, somehow or another, if you can figure out, and it may just be a lot more people, but if you can figure out a way to create some sort of game day experience, the scrapping of the statue is the right genre, but the wrong execution, whether maybe it would be like a band area or something, or I don't even know. It's way past my pay grade. I just think that you miss sometimes that feeling of it being an event, if that makes any sense to you.
Well, yeah, no, you're totally right. And if we're talking on things the Hunts could invest in,
Spend money.
Rector.
Go ahead.
Sorry?
Yeah, spend money. Go ahead.
Yeah. Reagan Rector asks, do you feel the Hunts have the ambition to compete to win MLS Cup?
No.
See, I'd say yes, but only in their own way.
Yeah, they on the macro big picture level, and this is 100% based on their actions now. I know it's not what they say, but their actions indicate that they're far more interested in the long-term survivability of the franchise, and that's fair. They own the team. But secondary to that, even in their own way, like they so far, to me, have not followed through enough. Like, there's not enough effort in the academy. There's not enough effort to keep academy players. There's not enough effort in scouting for these young internationals that can be like an academy player. Like Vargas is the right try, but poor execution. Shun is the right try and a good execution. So they can do it. It's just there's not enough. I have some issues with the academy even right now. Their bread and butter, their best thing they got going, has some problems right now. And, I don't see that. It's almost like they just don't pay enough attention. Sometimes they're just too distracted to let people that are running it do whatever they want and not noticing that it's not going right.
Speaking to people who work in different departments at FC Dallas, that seems to be a pretty recurring theme there. It's funny. You mentioned the academy, and yeah, it seems like the focus is, well, how can we monetize these players that we're developing? Because we sure aren't keeping them. Well, why aren't you keeping them? What more can you do to keep them? And then we get these now when they're talking about, oh yeah, well Pepi's an FC Dallas player, he's in the plans, and everyone kind of laughs at it. It's like, yeah, sure he is. You haven't got the money or the will to do it. I mean, if they do, great, good for them. It's just they haven't quite ponied up at the right time for those sort of things previously.
Yeah, they're all in on the Keep Pepi, by the way. Their whole campaign right now is based around come see Pepi in 2022. I mean, there's billboards in town now. Hey, listen, we've knocked them for not marketing. Hey, go for it. Listen, I mean, double down. Keep Pepi. Market the crap out of that guy. That's great. If you're actually doing it. If you're going to pretend like you're doing it and then you sell them, then it's the same crap.
Yeah, this when we get into marketing, we talk really about their lack of effort, but even if they're putting in the effort, they have to have a strategy behind it, and marketing a guy who almost certainly isn't going to be here next year is just asking people to buy tickets and then ask for a refund.
Yeah, they could catch a lot of heat since they seem to be basing their campaign for next year around that kid. They're going to catch a lot of heat. I mean, relatively speaking, a lot of heat if they sell him after this.
I mean, they've also got that danger of having like a big ad buy and the adverts are still running after he's gone.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, they've done that before with, remember like a Gold Cup game finishing, and they bought that International Champions Cup game, and they bought that advert at the very end that doesn't, and it was advertising the game that had already happened. You'll see like a bus that goes by with an advert from a game from 4 months ago or something. It's kind of the recurring joke with FC Dallas. The only thing they advertise has already happened.
Yeah, well, unfortunately. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's move on to hopefully better things then. Eric Tillish wants to know, what is the true likelihood of the team hiring a coach from outside the organization, and when can we have a timeline for when that coach may be announced?
Okay, the chances that it's somebody from outside the organization are only 20%. And it's not because they're not willing to. It's that people find out what this job pays. We don't know for sure what it pays, but we know from anecdotal evidence and from what people say about it, and the way coaching candidates pull their names out of the hat, that it doesn't pay very well, that it pays pretty low. And that's why that's one of the reasons why they always end up with coaches from inside. They end up where the only guys that really want this gig at the number that it is are the ones who are developing and coming up. They're like the new guys like your Lucci, or like a guy that's a current assistant that wants his first MLS gig, Steve Morrow, Colin Clark. The guys that are willing to take the low amount of money that they pay relative to what Bob Bradley probably just got to go to Toronto, where he's now the head coach and the sporting director, both, right? So the chances you're going to get somebody from outside the organization are very small just because of that timeline. The answer better be this week, because this is only 1 week left in November. And if you get into first week, second week of December, that means that you'll have less than a month to build your team with your coach in place if you wait that long. Because January is going to be camps. Camps are going to be either early or middle of January, depending on whether you get a 4-week camp or a 6-week camp. And it should be 6, which means it should be early January. So they're running out of time, actually, if your coach is going to have any input at all in building the roster, which, of course, we know this coach is probably going to have less input into building the roster than previous coaches might. We all know now that Zanata's basically building this team, and they're hiring a coach. Can't get rid of all the players, so you get rid of the coach and try and find another coach that can coach them. Here's my guys. Can you coach them? Again, that will impact their ability to get a guy from outside the organization. How in the world can you get, let's say, just as an example, if you'd have wanted Bob Bradley, how in the world are you going to get Bob Bradley when he's not going to be able to determine who the players are on his team? He's not going to go for that. No one with that kind of caliber name, no matter what you think about him, he has a name, is going to go for that. So these things all limit who you're going to get, which is why it's going to be an inside the house candidate.
And again, this has been episode 138. Thanks for listening.
I'm sorry. I know it's depressing, but
no, it's true. I mean, when we look at Zanata's history, he gives guys their first gig. Emma, we're in this interesting position compared to most leagues because MLS has so many dynamics that you need a coach that understands MLS. You can't just... Tata Martino is a great example. You can't just pull a guy in and... Actually, yeah, Tata, I guess you did.
The only foreign coach to win MLS Cup, by the way.
Yeah.
Or foreign coach that hadn't been here for like 15 or 20 years.
But, yeah, I mean, exactly. You need someone who knows the roster rules and everything else, that knows the dynamic of the travel, the variance in weathers, playing surfaces, everything, because it's so extreme compared to everywhere but Russia, really. It just lends itself, and being a low-paying role, it just makes it that, hey guys, do you want your first job and then maybe get a better job later on? Come to us. And it's not what you want it to be. It kind of doesn't, And if you want to say, the Hunts haven't got the ambition to win MLS Cup, that's a perfect example of somewhere that they could do better on.
Yeah.
I mean, they locked into Oscar Pereira. Lucci needed a few more years, and then he could have been the guy, but they rushed themselves out in really not being ambitious enough to keep Oscar.
Yeah, that's what we should remember, is that Lucci was supposed to have the North Texas job, and whatever person that would have been hired, maybe it would have been Tab Ramos if he hadn't pulled out at the last minute, would have had 3, 4, 5 years, however many, your common coach cycle is 3 to 5 years. And then Lucci would have been the guy, maybe not this year, but maybe like in a year or two, he would have been the guy. So, the timeline got accelerated in their process and how they work, and it's messed things up a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see how they adjust.
So in a roundabout way, what you're saying is when they do hire Eric Quill, you'll be able to say, Well, he shouldn't have been here, but they basically chased the best coach they've ever had out the door by not spending money and had to accelerate the progression of the guy beneath him to bring in somebody else that's now your coach.
Yeah. Well, Uchi talked his way into the job. Oscar wasn't all about the fact they weren't spending money. That was part of it. The inability to land a 9 in particular. He also has ambitions as a coach. You know, he wanted to prove himself in the hot cauldron of Mexico. And he took one of the hottest, craziest jobs there was. And then when that job went away, another job came along. It happens to be back in MLS. So, you know, he may still be in the mode of trying to prove himself and wanting to try other things in different groups and different positions. And who's to say that somebody else won't come along and offer Oscar a job that he'll jump at? Again, I don't think it'll be FC Dallas anytime soon. I think that, you know, his someday back here is not like within the next 5 years or so. It's much further down the line.
Okay, well, while we're dreaming of Oscar Ferreira coming back for a glorious, rare, good second run, because it seems like everyone has a terrible second stint, let's dream about DPs. Carlos wants to know, if you could have any current MLS DP on FC Dallas, who would it be?
I'm going to answer this question in the context of the team as it is right this minute. Okay? So I'm only just bringing in one DP for this current team. The answer is João Paulo from Seattle. Do you know who he is?
Absolutely. He was one of the ones I was looking at. There's a guy you can play as that kind of holding midfielder that kind of drives.
He's a holding mid, and I believe he led their team in assists too as a holding mid. Now the problem is he's 30, so like you can't build like a 5-year plan around him. But like if you want to take this current FC Dallas team and give yourself the very best shot to get as good as you can, while you maybe keep Pepi for a year, while you have Jesus for a year, that kind of player replacing Quignon, Christian Falco, to me that's the biggest jump. Because if I have him with Cervania or him in a double 8 kind of look or whatever, that to me that solves so many problems in your team, because I think you can get away with an Nkosi Hedges combo with some Bressan or whatever, or some Martinez or whatever in there. I think it all comes together with that guy, that missing guy, and he's the guy. Now, if I was building a team from scratch, I wouldn't be a 30-year-old guy. Then I want a time machine and I want 25-year-old Diego Chara. But that's not a real answer to a real question. A real question is right this minute, João Paulo.
Diego Chara amazingly isn't a DP. His brother Yumi is, though.
That's weird.
I was definitely looking at the list, trying to look for holding midfielders, and because you need. I know you always say it's one of the most important places that you need a DP, and we definitely saw it with Carlos Grace. So since I couldn't find anyone under 30 that I really liked the look of, my answer went to what could FC Dallas kind of do and flip a player with. And I came to Haney Mukhtar, who we just saw dominate Nashville's game with Orlando. 26 years old, only $1.5 million a year. Nashville only paid $3 million for him. And, he's 18 goals, 10 assists now. I mean, that's the guy that you can build on for a couple of years, or you can make an absolute bomb selling him. Yeah. And he plays multiple positions. So you're not necessarily going to infringe upon the development of too many of your young players, but just as kind of a dream player with those numbers and his cost.
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, if we want to do dream scenarios, can I have Carlos Grezzo back? That's fine for me. I'll take him back right now. No questions asked. Yeah.
Absolutely no. So next question we have is from Mark DeWeese, and I think I'm just going to take this one if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
What is the complete behind-the-scenes, fully detailed story as to why Kellen Acosta left FC Dallas? That is Kellen's business and Kellen's business only, unfortunately, and it would be really unfair to him and his family to discuss that.
Yeah, I will not bring up, discuss the off-field situation that led to him wanting to leave. But what you have to understand is that he went into Oscar's office and sat down and said, I've lost the joy of soccer. It's become work and drudgery for me. and I want to leave. And Oscar tried to talk him out of it. Oscar laid out a plan. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. And Kellen said, no, I need to go. And so it broke Oscar's heart, but he, has a lot of love for Kellen. So he said, okay, I'll do what I can for you. And he got the best deal he can. And again, you and I are not going to get into what was going on because it's only hearsay, and I'm not going to say hearsay for sure. And it's certainly none of our business. So you can assure that it was an off-field situation that led to him wanting to depart. And that's about all we can really say about it.
I think, when you look at his US men's national team career, it's him and Sebastian Lletget are really the MLS guys on those European-based rosters most of the time. I think he's excelled in a new environment. He seems personally happy in himself. His family are very happy with this situation. So, maybe FC Dallas didn't win on the trade, but I think, he was the first big success for the academy, the guy that people like Paxton Pomacole looked up to, and you want what's best for him at the end of the day.
Yeah, you can watch him play for Colorado these days, and you can see that the thing that made him great in his early FC Dallas days is back. Whatever that mojo is, that movement, that range, that just crushing ability to just dominate the central park of the field is all there. So, good for him that he's found it again. And anybody that comes to the academy here, I want nothing for the best of him, and I'm glad that he's back playing at peak soccer.
Absolutely. Speaking, we're going to go with our last Patreon subscriber question, and it stays in that kind of FC Dallas homegrowns playing the 6 role. You'd mentioned previously that Edwin Cerrillo has a few holes in his game. What are they? Watching his progression, especially during the end of the season, has been encouraging. I do remember some bad red card moments in North Texas and FCD. Seems like he's ridden the thin line between tone-setting, tackling, and cards. Do you think he can get there?
Oh, no question. He absolutely can get there. At the beginning of last year, one of the things he was missing was that little bit of nastiness. And partway through the season, he found that. And then the next thing that was missing was what we would call progressive play, which is winning a ball, recovering a ball, receiving a ball, being able to turn and make a dribble or two to bypass a player, and then make a line-breaking pass, progressive pass, not a horizontal or backwards pass, because often when he would play last year, every pass is backwards. Now you're seeing a percentage of them going forwards in a progressive manner. So those two things were the two things that were missing from his game in a technical sense. Now the only thing that's missing is experience. A truly great 6 that's young is very, very rare. Particularly Edwin, who is transitioning from being a wing. Now, he transitioned in around the 17s or 19s from being a winger to a 6. So, relatively speaking, he has not played it like his whole life, like some guys do. And his pro career is still relatively short compared to like João Paulo, who's probably played all his life as a 6, and certainly most of his career as a 6. Edwin's only played a couple of years as a 6. So a guy like Grezzo, who was as good as he was so young, is really, really rare. So for Edwin, it's just time. He just needs to play more. He needs to pick up the seasoning. Like center backs, a 6 requires a lot of experience and a lot of game reading and a lot of situational instincts. That's all Edwin needs, is just playing time. As long as he continues to be in the rotation and continues to get time, he'll get better and better and better. And within a season or two, he'll be ready to be the full-time start every game guy. He just needs a little more time still. Pure attacking players like Pepi can play so much on instinct. Defensive players have to learn and learn and learn and learn. And that's all everyone just needs, is just time. So if you had a guy, it's probably going to be Faco because he's locked up for 3 years. But if you had a guy instead of him, João Paulo is the example we were using earlier, who is 30 and might have a couple of years left. That's all Edwin needs, is somebody to learn from a couple of years, and then he'll be ready to be the guy in that spot. And if we keep Faco around here, then Edwin's going to play a fair amount next year anyway, just because I don't think Faco will hold up. And also Edwin very shortly, if he hasn't already, will start to outplay that guy. So I think Edwin's going to be an MLS lifer level player, and I think he could be the cornerstone of this midfield here for a long, long time. With a couple more years progression in his game, most of it will come from his mind and his soccer wisdom, if you will.
Yeah, I definitely. One thing that I thought about was one thing he covered, his read on the game. I think sometimes, and as you mentioned, it's 100% an experience thing. Sometimes he gets a little lost tracking back into the box. Sometimes seeing those players emerge, especially out in the wings, because one thing FC Dallas has been pretty good at, especially it was something that Oscar wanted to do, it was something that Lucci wanted to do, it was something that Grace was really good at, was receiving the ball in the middle and spreading it wide, hitting somebody on the run. If you've got Hader Obrian or Sabot Shun chasing down the wing, you want to hit them guys in stride, and that's the ball that your six plays. They've kind of relied on Nkosi to hit those balls actually over the top to the wings, which not necessarily the guy you want to be doing that. Okay, yeah, he's got a great view of the game, but if you've got your sixers is working on a pivot 20 yards in front, he can kind of whip that ball in a little bit neater, and you just kind of want to see him, even if he makes that check pass back, to take a look over his shoulder, kind of set himself for playing that ball on receiving the pass back again. You want Edwin to be that guy that can play that. Now, we've seen in the past, whether it's Pepi working with Hara or Grana and Reggie Cannon, some veteran talent kind of helping guys out with parts of that game, and I really hope that Faku is working with Edwin. It benefits everyone. That's what a veteran's supposed to do.
Yeah.
So, it'll be interesting to see how that comes out next season.
All those things fall under what I would call feel of the game, being able to almost subconsciously feel it coming, right? And recognition, almost not even front lobe recognition, but instinctual recognition of the game as it develops, whether it be that tracking that run or knowing where your teammates are when you get the ball to be progressive. So it's just feel and experience and wisdom of the game. And Edwin will get that over the next couple of years, and I think he'll be ready. I mean, he's pretty close to ready now, but that's the difference between Edwin, the role player, and Edwin, like the dominant midfielder, is going to be that part.
Thank you so much to the Patreon subscribers for some fantastic questions there. Let's move on to questions received from Twitter from the wider FC Dallas audience. Caleb Friedrich gets 4 for the price of 1. Not entirely sure how, but I guess let's take him in order. Firstly, how is Thomas Roberts' loan in Austria going?
Slow. The information I'm getting is that they're actually really, really excited about his future, and they wanted to bring him along slowly with no pressure. So they're easing him in. And I know that there's some teams that are looking at him and tracking him too. So I think it's going well enough, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly had some adversity with the guy that's playing ahead of him, the paperwork not coming through for a long time. He has subbed into 4 of the last 5 games in all competitions, even if they are very limited minutes. He had an assist in one of them, so yeah, it's at least you can see a progression at least.
Yep.
And then on the back of that, will FC Dallas send anyone on loan to Europe next season?
Well, I mean, Thomas and Sealy will be there, but yeah, I'm sure they will. Getting guys playing time that aren't playing. Benny Redzic comes to mind. Those kinds of guys that need opportunity that maybe aren't feeling it with North Texas. That can be an opportunity. I don't think you'll see Brandon Cervania go again, for example. That won't work. I could see Justin Shea being loaned rather than sold potentially. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's interesting. I asked Brandon after a game about his experiences and and how that kind of relates to Thomas. When Brandon was on loan in Austria last season, he was really talking about kind of how getting a player out of the comfort zone with the language and everything else can really help their mindset. It'll be interesting to see. One thing we've talked about with Thomas in the past certainly was a little bit mindset related. We've talked about with Seeley. I think we've talked about it a bit with Che this season. So, it's definitely, even if they're not playing, it seems like a good place. And actually, Benny Regic, you mentioned, when he was really highly touted and then suddenly went off the radar and wasn't a homegrown prospect anymore, that it was really the mental side of the game, and maybe that would be a great benefit to him. Okay, Caleb's third question, moving on. If FC Dallas plays a 4-3-3, would Jesus be better as an attacking 8 or as the 9?
Well, the 9, assuming Pepi is not here, the 9. Jesus lacks the tactical defensive discipline to play as a free 8, like Paxton does. That's Paxton's best pure position, is that attacking 8. Jesus, to me, is either an off striker or a false 9. So, assuming Pepe's gone, false 9. If Pepe stays, then you got to end up with some kind of formation that has 2 strikers or uses that same high 10 that we just saw from Jesus last year.
I think when you look at FC Dallas and the way they kind of pitch themselves on being a development club for the national team, Jesus' only option is being the 9, so it almost plays into that mantra of theirs. In preferring him as a 9.
Agree.
And then I think we may all know the answer to this question already, but does FC Dallas need to invest more in coaching and structure in the academy?
Yes, absolutely. I recently sort of have come to the conclusion that they have a problem right now related to Lucci being promoted to the first team head coach. They never replaced him. Chris Hayden is the director of the academy and he's the VP of youth. That used to be 2 people doing those 2 jobs. Oscar and Hayden did them together, and then Hayden and Lucci did them together, and now Hayden's doing them both. Man, that's a lot of management. I mean, the FC Dallas youth is just massive, and running the academy is a full-time gig. So there needs to be an investment there in that split. I think they need to do some investment in, you don't have to have big-name coaches, famous coaches across the board, but you need to have some. So I think they need to try and appeal to some FC Dallas names that have coaching background in order to bring some recruiting into the academy, some of that kind of stuff. And then they also need to take FC Dallas youth a little more seriously. A lot of people think that if you don't play for the academy or if you're not even one of the top 3, 4, 5 players, that FC Dallas doesn't care. Now, I'm not saying that's true. I'm just saying that like a lot of people think that, which means that it's affecting you. So I think they need to, if they're going to continue, the other option is to get out of FC Dallas youth and quit doing it. Like a lot of the academies in MLS now don't run the youth club underneath. They just do academy, the 6 or 7 teams, and that's it. So they can either get out of FC Dallas youth and eliminate that part of their responsibility, except that it makes a lot of money, in which case they need to be responsible to it. And I think pay more attention to it. And again, some of that I think comes from this lack of the division of the one job. Now, it could be that someone that's involved in the academy tells me I'm crazy, but from the outside, I think it's a problem, and I think that needs to be addressed. Hayden's going to probably be mad at me for saying that. But.
Yeah, it's definitely, they're definitely not kicking FC Dallas youth. I think that's like 15 million net.
Right.
I find it odd, even if Hayden wasn't wearing both hats of youth and academy, just having the entire youth under one person. Normally there's like a director of boys youth, director of girls youth. FC Dallas doesn't really have that, and the girls' side is certainly ramping up more and more as things go along. You've got the WPSL side, you've got the ECNL sides. It just it feels like they need to compartmentalize the academy and youth section just a little bit more and kind of have. I mean, we've both spoken to Chris Hayden. And we know that he gets thousands of emails a day. Now nobody can read and respond to thousands of emails a day, and we know that's all about we know a lot of that's about youth and academy stuff. It's just a huge ask of one person to it's a huge ask of even 2 people to do that.
Yeah.
At least if you're running just the academy, it's what, 14s, 15s, 16s, 17s, 19s now.
Yeah, and if the academy is going to be your bread and butter of your organization, which we've talked about over and over that it really is, and that includes youth, then you need to treat it like it is across the board, and have it be a first line priority and hire enough people to do a good enough job with it to make it work. There's no question that the last couple of years there's a downturn in the academy. There's some cracks showing, and there has to be a reason for it. It's not a total coincidence. Oscar's gone, Lucci's gone, the Bazan brothers are gone. A lot of the great recruiters, Luciner's gone, Javier Morales is gone. They're just, the cupboard is thin. They need to do some things. And this is not an indictment of any particular individual as much as it is a broader belief and investment in the thing that is actually making you boatloads of money. All in on it. If you're going to be all in on it, be all in on it. Don't be half in on it and then hope you get lucky.
I mean, it's very much like retooling a farm system in baseball. You've got to have, you've got to replenish the player pool, but you've also got to say, okay, well, are the development aspects, the clubs and the coaches really working right now, or do they need refreshing too?
Yeah.
Well,
good question.
Thank you. Sorry. I'll say thank you, Caleb, for those 4 questions. Apparently, we have an Antipodean, a Socceroo, who asks, what will North Texas SC look like if it is truly a reserve team in 2022?
Well, it'll be very similar to what it is now. FC Dallas already runs that team as basically a U23 team. They don't run it as a full USL Division III team. Like everyone else in that league pretty much did. Now, MLS says MLS 2 will be the same thing as USL 1, that they will allow outside teams. They will allow every MLS team to use it differently. If you want to have a bunch of 30-year-old guys on your MLS 2 team, you're welcome to do that. If you want to have it be a whole bunch of reserves going down, you're welcome to do that. I think FC Dallas already has set the mold for what they want their reserve team to be, their U23 team. So most of the differences are only going to be contractually structures. They're going to be behind the scenes. It's going to be how guys are passed from one to the other. It's going to possibly be in compensation. So it'll basically look exactly like it does now, pending possibly a different head coach. Perhaps.
I'm a little interested to see how MLS2 works. After seeing how the USL Academy is going to work, it's going to be like a single team from under 15 to 19, I believe. And basically teams can opt in and out and say, hey, we don't want to play against a team that's just 15-year-olds. We want to play our 15s against the 19s. And, it has to be something mutually agreed that, all the clubs feel works for their benefit. Now, I could definitely see an FC Dallas 2 saying, yeah, we absolutely want the 30-year-olds that's going to elbow the shit out of our young players and help them grow. Whereas, some of the other teams who are lesser developed will be like, yeah, we want to play kids versus kids. I think in a way that kind of dictates quite a bit, because then do you have to fill out a few more age-appropriate players to get those games, or do you kind of risk it being an extension of the academy?
Well, there are already some teams that are leaning towards going to be an extension of the academy. Like Houston got rid of their U19 team. They go from U17 straight to their U23 team, which is what's going to be their MLS2 team. They're not the only ones that have done that. Some other clubs have done that as well. I know that there was some consideration when they formed MLS Next, the youth academy, that they weren't going to have U19s at all. They had to get talked into having a U19 division. So, that'll be an interesting progression to watch for FC Dallas. Is down the line, do they eliminate the U19 team? Because there's only a couple of, by the time you've signed out of the U17s, your very biggest hot prospects, there might only be 1 or 2 guys left that you're really interested in, and you can just play them with North Texas. So it'll be an interesting way to see how Dallas uses it. Now, I think that you have to, in terms of running the league, if you really want it to be Division III, you have to establish the rules of competition and stick to it. And it's like, you can use it however you want. You can bring up all teenage academy players if you want, but they open this league up to teams from outside of Major League Soccer. And if any of those teams take them up on it, and if they really want to be Division III, and some of the MLS teams may use it more as a place to get minutes for their first team players, you could get stomped 10-0 if you roll a bunch of 16-year-olds out there. So I don't think you're going to see a lot of pure like teenagers teams, but you'll definitely see a whole lot of U23 type teams. I think that'll be the majority of what it is, short of outsiders buying in and coming in, which may or may not happen, even though they've said they're going to open it up to that. Someone's still got to bite on it and do it. So that'll be different.
Yeah, it's gonna be very interesting to see what happens on that.
It's an evolution still. Yeah, we'll see.
Absolutely. Alexis wants to know a couple of questions from outside of FC Dallas. Firstly, any information on the Cotton Bowl possibly being a World Cup venue, or any information on the FIFA evaluation of the Dallas bid?
Yeah, we know people that are involved in some of this stuff, and the information I have is that the Cotton Bowl is not up for being a venue. The only stadium in the Metroplex up for it is AT&T Stadium, and their bid for AT&T Stadium is going through. You were at the presentation, right? They're looking at a couple of different ways to get the field dimensions up. They are not the only stadium under consideration that has too small of a field. So this kind of idea of making your surface bigger is going to play into some of these other stadiums like SoFi in LA, for example. So no Cotton Bowl. It's just going to be AT&T, and I'm assuming that Dallas will get, this part's my guess, I'm assuming they're going to get a semifinal at least because of the venue and the size of the population in the central part of the United States. All that leads to the likability, the love affair that FIFA will have with that venue, and why you'll get a big game there.
Fair Park will be involved. Dallas is one of two places bidding for the International Broadcast Center, along with Atlanta. So Fair Park was, I think, 50% of the host of that in '94, and they're looking at that again. I believe the United bid has actually recommended Dallas as its preferred choice. AT&T Stadium is not the United bid's preferred choice. They preferred the Meadowlands, but Dallas is bidding for the final along with New York, New Jersey, and LA SoFi Stadium. So, all accounts are the visit went very well. Obviously, the visits are actually still still underway. It was just the second leg, I believe, of the tour across the US, Mexico, and Canada. The second part that Fair Park was up for was the Midway was actually going to be one of the potential fan zone or fan fest, whatever they call venues. I believe that's since been changed. It's a very fluid situation. They've added so many sites right now, but I think it was replaced by Sundance Square in Fort Worth, along with Clyde Warren Park and a few other places. But Dallas as a whole is definitely going to play a huge part in the 2026 World Cup, any which way you look at it.
Yep.
And Luis's other question was about the relocation of Austin Bold to Fort Worth. Any update on that, and where would they play?
Well, not any particular updates beyond the fact that they're transferring that franchise to somebody else. Our information is that it's Donnie Nelson's group that they're transferring that to. Obviously, the stadium long-term, theoretically, is this deal up by Keller, which Keller ISD would have some involvement with. It'll be off of 35 there, north of 183, somewhere up that direction. The only question I think really is, the question is short-term, where do they play? And the fact that we haven't heard anything about this thing in terms of this season's not that far away for next year's USL. If they're like MLS, they're going to start in February, March or something. And we've heard nothing. So I'm actually starting to think that this team might be on hiatus a little bit as they try and iron out that stadium deal. And there may not be a temporary place to play, that they may just sit on that franchise for a year or two or whatever it takes to get the new stadium in play. Because otherwise you're looking at playing it. I mean, Texas Wesleyan is building a new football stadium, but how far away is that? You're looking at trying to talk TCU into letting you play there, I guess, or playing at Farrington Field like the Vaqueros did, I guess. I mean, I'm not even sure the city of Fort Worth is all that involved. You know, it's more Keller ISD in Tarrant County, I think. So it's a complicated process, other than the fact that it seems pretty clear that the Bold are going away and coming to Fort Worth. There's still a lot of balls in the air on this one.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting when you think Donnie Nelson's group, Neltec Sports, they've got a bit of an involvement in soccer. They own Texas United, which has played out of UT Dallas this year. Their youth academy, from what it sounds like, which will play in the USL Academy, is, I think it's going to be based in Fort Worth, which would kind of play into...
Yep.
Maybe, some kind of amalgamation between the USL 2 and championship teams, like a junior, senior type deal. But that leaves them, even if that would leave them without a stadium, because the field in Richardson wouldn't really suffice for that. If they could get on that TCU facility, TCU doesn't have a men's team. Beautiful facility, only being used by the women's team. Not a great deal of use. A lot of us have been for when FC Dallas had US Open Cup games there. That would be fantastic. But yeah, we're still waiting on that Keller deal. Was that kind of just a flash in the pan, like we've seen, in all those cricket stadiums that were promised, and however many other stadiums that have been talked about through Colin, Denton, and Tarrant counties in the last few years?
Yeah. I mean, all we know really is that the Bold have said that they're not playing and that they're transferring the ownership to somebody, in theory, for this Fort Worth thing. And then we've heard nothing else. And it's like, you're now looking at such a short turnaround that to me, it almost feels impossible that it's actually happening this year. It's like, it's going to be an incredibly short, duct taped together minor league situation if they actually do find any place to play and manage to field the team. You'd think you'd start seeing playing announcements, coaches announcements, branding announcements. None of that exists. So for all we know, the Bold are just gone and then nothing's going to happen.
It's weird how that was an answer about the FC Dallas coaching situation as much as it was the Austin Bold.
Yeah. Same.
Okay.
Yeah. Same boat. Yeah.
Absolutely. Especially with the World Cup around the corner, this off season is tight.
Yes.
Speaking of off season moves, Ishmael Belcora asks, any super draft or homegrown college signings that you think will probably happen this year?
Yeah, I think that you'll probably see one college homegrown like they usually tend to do. I did a little short list of them the other day of the ones I think are possible. I think Kevin Bonilla from Portland is the most likely. He played 2 years with North Texas and was a starter when he's there, pretty much. He's definitely one of those guys. The only question is, has he been enough time in college for the club, or not? Daniel Evans at Kentucky is probably the second most likely. He's a senior, or Holland Rula, who's a left back from Wake. Maybe those guys, but I'm not super leaning into them. The kid that shockingly went from Richland to Tulsa, Fazio, Dan, you probably know who I'm talking about. He just won the Conference USA Defender of the Year award. That's a guy that's super interesting because Dallas has had him in camp for like an extended look when he was playing at Richland. He was in for a couple of weeks one time, and his brother plays. I think it's his brother plays
Roma.
Somewhere. Roma, is that where he is? So there's a pedigree there, and there's an ability. Clearly, there's an ability there. How he's sort of fallen through the system is interesting. So that's a guy you might keep an eye on, just because there's an intimate knowledge from this club with that kid. Because Richland's coach is one of their academy coaches, Herrera. I think he's a goalkeeper coach, and they have some other FC Dallas guys that have gone to Tulsa. So clearly there's a pipeline there. I think it's kind of an intriguing name to keep an eye on in the draft. Dallas lately likes these guys you're like scratching your head at a little bit. These more diamondy in the rough kind of guys. They're not going and getting like some dude from the ACC as much anymore. They're now looking sort of outside the norm, whether it's Nikosi Burgess or, somebody else's homegrown and they trade for his rights or things like that. So those are just some names to bandy about for you.
Oh, definitely. And Mariano Fazio, 6'3" defender. He was playing on North Texas through their Open Cup runs. Supposedly he was born in Spain, but the guy that everyone always says is his brother is from Argentina, so interesting. Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see about that one. Ross Green wants to know, starting 11 for MLS2 team next year, if you can manage that one.
Yeah, well, I saw that one, and this one's kind of impossible. But what I think I can tell you is, some guys I think it's time to move on. Some guys I think it's important to keep. Blaine Ferry will feature heavily. If they keep Kazu, he'll feature heavily. The two Portuguese guys, Lucio and Morias, will feature heavily because they only came in right before this season. But Allison's probably gone. Other than the fact that we love him as a player coach, maybe Waldeck might be done. Richard Sanchez might be with the first team. So, if they do sign Antonio Carrera, you'll see a lot of him. I think it's time to move on from Gibran Rayo, either MLS or USL Championship for him. But, Jaquel didn't work out. It's time to move on from Emmanuel Almaguer. So Alex Bruce, it's time to move on. So Hope Cudzo that he'll be big. Kazu, Blaine Ferry, Kamungo, the kid from Amarillo, he'll be huge next year. Maybe start every single game with an eye on him being an MLS, maybe with one more season. Colin Smith should start every single game on loan down from FC Dallas still. If Alejandro can get healthy, he's that Mexican-Brazilian kid that for a while was the star of the team for about a month and a half. And then he got hurt, and we never saw him again. So you can get him healthy. That'll be interesting. So there's some pieces down there. If Kaiser Gomez comes back at center back, he'll play every game. There's some interesting pieces down there that'll be the core of that team. And that's before they even try and get in a couple more pieces. If there are some new homegrowns that they need to mix in there, if there are some more guys that are going to come down and get some minutes. Nicky Hernandez needs a lot of playing time, for example, coming out from MLS still. It's going to be, the same sort of vibe as you had now. And you can see the guys that were playing a lot towards the end of the season will be your core going forward next season.
While you were answering, I was looking up, I was Twitter stalking Mariano Fazio. It does seem like Federico Fazio at Roma is his brother.
Yeah.
So that would be a funny link with Brian Reynolds and the Toyota Gulf States owner as well, if they did plug for him. There
is for sure a behind the curtain FC Dallas Roma love fest going on these days with those two owners.
Well, Joseph would like to know the odds on Jesus' return in 2022, which I believe you said was 20% likely for him to leave. So is that 80% likely to stay?
Yeah. We answered this question earlier, but Joseph, just to give you the answer again really quickly, I have 80% likely that Jesus will stay.
And Cody, to wrap us up, asks, realistically, what is one position you think FC Dallas will improve via transfer this offseason? Not can, will.
Will, left wing.
Yeah. That was easier than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. As much as we like Shun, he will get call-ups. And you would like, preferably, someone that can play both sides because you want to also have somebody that can push Jader Obrian on the right. So I'm going to lean left wing, but just say wing broader than that. Somebody that can do both sides, for example. That's a position. Sealy's gone. You don't know what you have in Elmed Cure yet. With so much money in Hara and maybe them trying to push Pepi to stay, not that. Plus they have Jesus. They got crap tons of eights laying around. They got 2 more years in Faco and Edwin behind him. They got 4 center backs under contract already for the next 2 or 3 years. They got left back, Johnny Nelson. Even if you upgraded your backup left back because of Nelson's injury worries, you still have Ryan, so that's not going to improve. Emma looks like the man at right back now. So what are you going to get another backup there? Goalie, if Mauer's healthy, Mauer's fine. backup goalie maybe. So really the answer to the what frontline position can you improve by this offseason, I think it's going to be wing.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Sorry, Cody, that definitely sounded like it was going to be way harder to answer. But yeah, definitely with Schoon's international prospects, especially in this weird season. Okay, he's not going to be playing at the World Cup, but you're going to have Euro qualifiers, UEFA Nations League, everything else that unfortunately they're going to be drawn to, and this World Cup is only going to create more chances to have international windows, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a weird year. So, and the European Nations League is still a building thing, that's going to be taking place, even if you include just the domestic players from Dallas, they're going to be missing, right? Pepe's going to miss if he's here, going to miss. Jesus is going to miss. Maybe Paxton can get healthy and start to miss, some frontline kind of action there is going to be beneficial to the team, whether it's a guy who can spot 9 or play either wing, or even drop into if Jesus is still and Pepe are both here, and so you're using that 10 role, a guy that could slot inside like they would do with Vargas. That kind of guy I think makes a lot of sense. Even if you keep Schoon and keep Hadir, those two dudes ain't starting 34 games. Somebody else has got to start 10, 15 games or more really to keep it balanced and healthy and active with all those call-ups.
I think as well, just FC Dallas's patterns over the last few years, even if you're not thinking specifically about with Zanotta, it's been a lot of tinkering on the wings, trying to get things settled and right.
Yeah.
Even last year, just kind of dumping your wingers in Barrios and Fafa. If things weren't 100% right. Now, Fafa looked like he could have been a decent used part. Barrios had one bad season and approaching a pretty large increase on his contract. Nothing's guaranteed, as players like to remind us. But I guess one thing is that at least one of those wings will see a new player brought to it.
Yeah, I agree.
Right, well, thank you everybody for the questions. Again, we kind of touched on it. What you just experienced was really a collection of Buzz's third degree burns. They're a great little listen. Patreon subscribers get full access to those, and also get the chance to ask those questions and have them answered personally. People in the Discord can kind of have it at the time, just in text or in that nice, easily digestible 2 to 10 minute kind of mini pod format. So thank you, Buzz, for enlightening us all.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, I tend to, if it's a one or two sentence answer, I will type it. But if it's a really good extended topic, then I'll save it for a burn. Yeah. Definitely. Hey, Dan, did you know that Soccer 90 is your source for all things FC Dallas?
I did. I was actually going to say that I've spoken so much on today's episode that I'm going to take a vow of silence for the next week. But before then, I just had to share it that not only is Soccer 90 your source for all FC Dallas, US national team, and international club gear, but this Black Friday, which, it's still a new thing to me, I'm foreign and all that, but you can save with deals up to 50% off everything. That's good in-store because, they have the store on the south end of the stadium. It's really cool, even if Seattle is one of the jerseys on display currently instead of FC Dallas. And online. You don't even have to use your third degree promo code. That's not going to do much for you. And then if you miss out on that, Cyber Monday is always there too. Only online, but 40% off everything all day long on soccer90.com.
So are you still getting your brain wrapped around Thanksgiving as a Brit?
I keep getting people asking me if that's a thing. I'm like,
no,
we didn't have Native Americans in the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
Happy Thanksgiving to you, and I'll enjoy a couple of days off work, and happy Thanksgiving to all of our listeners who've joined us on episode 138 of Third Degree, the podcast.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Third degree, the third Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.